a lot of people. So, here we go. Frameable Faces wants to jump in. Let's see what Frameable Faces has to say. Frameable Faces from the Meerkat space. What's up, Doug? How are you?
Frameable.
Guys,
how's it going, man?
It's going great.
Hey, so what say you? What are your thoughts on this Twitter discussion?
So when I was in the scope, I jumped in because you said we want to let somebody come in. And while I was in the scope, I was just commenting on how I've never been more active on Twitter than I am now because of Periscope, flat out. And the activity and the connections that I've made on Twitter, I'm getting more out of Twitter than I ever have before because of what's going on Periscope. And when I do a scope, if I have a question that comes up in the scope and I say, hey, DM me afterwards, we can take it offline. I'm making all these connections on Twitter, and it's really jump-started my Twitter activity since I started live streaming. And the other thing that I want to ask that I've been dying to get some thoughts on from some guys like you who are really plugged into this. I've been saying all along that I think just from a user's perspective, I think Twitter's been really smart about the way they've brought Periscope into the mix and Vine into the mix, because I feel like Vine was kind of falling off the map for a little while there. It was starting to become a lot less popular. The teenagers were leaving Vine, but all of a sudden you see these little tweaks where now you can see your Vine count in your Twitter profile, and the way you can embed a Vine into a blog post, and the way you can download a Periscope to your device and then take 6 seconds from your scope and make it into a Vine. I think they've been really smart the way they've combined the functionality and the integration of all three of these platforms. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
So it's interesting, because Vine was dying, and Vine, just the idea that your Vine profile is now embedded with your Twitter profile, I thought was a smart play.
It was dying on the Vine.
Dying on the Vine. But for me, one of the things on Periscope, I kind of felt that Periscope users, or Periscope, I guess, designers, didn't understand Twitter when they got bought, right? And rightfully so. They probably didn't even, that wasn't calculated. Because when we shared our Periscopes up to a couple months ago, it didn't auto-populate even the Twitter handle of the user. Yet Meerkat was doing that. Lots of them were doing that. The interesting thing for me on the Periscope Twitter combination is I've said this for a while. I thought Twitter was smart, allowing third-party companies to manage the management of Twitter. So the Hootsuite, the Buffer, the Sprout Social, the Edgar. What I thought they would do is they would flip to the data to monetize. So, like going even to power users or brands and presenting them data that not every user cares about, but allowing those brands to pay for it. And I actually think it's a play on Periscope. Because I can tell you the brands that I'm working with right now would pay for the data that Periscope has. Let's say, most active users, the entire user list, where the conversation dipped in your Periscope. The idea of what's your average length of your Periscope, what's the average demographic of those that watch your Periscope. And so for me, I agree that the fact, I told you, it was Christmas, the day that Periscope feeds, the Periscope broadcast landed in the feed. I thought that was amazing. That was something I didn't expect to happen. They told us it took 6.5 months of development to put that in there, which is mind-boggling. But I think the problem also comes in the fact is, let's just say hashtags. Even in Periscope, you can put in a title that when someone shares it, it cuts off the majority of your title, right? And little things like that to me are the definition of, okay, we need to make this a little bit clearer, right? Because people are like, well, Brian, I use hashtags in my Periscope titles, and you tell me that's valuable on Twitter, but when I go to Twitter, I can't find it. Well, it's because you did 85 characters, not 80 characters. And when I tell somebody that, they go, wait, isn't it 140 characters? So for me, I agree with the Periscope one, and I can tell you, I'm now dialed in with the Periscope team. There's only 28 of them. The amount of work that they're doing as a entity living inside of Twitter, to me is amazing, hands down. The community. But I would love for them to see them kind of integrate. And I think it's a big tell for those that didn't hear the other news. Kayvon got promoted from Periscope founder to executive of Twitter. And I actually think that's a telling mark as well, is now Kayvon, who understands the community, who's been a face. We haven't had a face of Twitter forever. We've never had a face. There's never been an evangelist of Twitter. Robert Scoble's even acting as an evangelist of Facebook right now. He rejuvenized my entire love for Facebook because of what Robert's done. But in the Twitter space, Twitter's never hired someone, paid someone, or took someone and made them the face of the brand. I mean, nobody that I can think of. Joel, what about you?
Well, no, they've been incredibly agnostic to the point where even when I was there when the first Twitter part was a hit, they did not want to associate with books at all. And I've been there 3 times now, and they've not wanted to affiliate. But look what Facebook did. Facebook has made Mari Smith the face to educate small business about Facebook. Why the heck isn't Twitter pulling some people in? What is this agnostic thing that they don't want to get involved? Fine. Look at your growth. Oh, there isn't any. Look at your stock price. It's going down. Figure this out.
No, yeah, and you know what? Periscope, and back to your point, Doug, Periscope's value, at the Super Bowl, the amount of people that were live tweeting in the area where I was at was amazing. There was people live tweeting all over the place. I was using my Tweetbot app to understand where they were tweeting from, so I could do proximity-based, diagnostic of tweets, which is like, a power-using piece of Twitter. But one of the things that I actually thought was interesting was because Periscope, Twitter has never done a good job at offline events. Nobody has gone to an event and saw a Twitter team walking around with a hashtag on their shirt giving away swag. They've never, the power of Twitter is from offline events or a conference because everybody gets in there and you find active people and all of a sudden you now are able to connect because let's be real, we give a business card and we throw it in a box or in our bag. Twitter turns into that continued conversation after an event. But sadly, Twitter has just let that happen organically. And I think that's one of the fails. I mean, how many events have had horrible hashtags that are either too long or don't make sense, or when you look at them, the history of them, it's really a sex string of sex bots have been using that hashtag for. I mean, you should have seen me looking at the Hey Twitter hashtag when I decided to use that. There's some interesting stuff that people post on the Hey Twitter one, but I think the idea of live events, and then Rachel says right here, why hasn't the Twitter embraced UX onboarding like other networks? I mean, how sad is it that when you sign up for a new app on your phone, let's say Slack or Box or even Gmail. I mean, heaven forbid Google is figuring out mobile. You actually get walked through. This is the inbox. This is the things that you're going. When you get Twitter, it's like here's a bunch of users that have a bunch of followers that will never engage you.
Yeah,
Ellen. Yeah, here's the status bar, and remember it's 140 characters. Go. And to your point, Joel, when you line up, you're a small business, you're sold on the fact that Twitter is powerful. Where do you find out where my resources are as a small business on who to follow and who to listen to?
Third-party books.
So I think it's an interesting conversation. I think Periscope, I was joking with a friend, I won't say his name, that works at Twitter. And he said every day he comes in, he goes, so anybody realize if we got bought by Periscope yet? It's almost like a running joke because the Periscope growth is going up. The idea that you can stand out from the noise. But, I think, and let's get into the algorithm conversation. And thanks so much, Doug, for jumping in, my friend. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
He is frameable. That face belongs in a frame.
He is awesome. Him and his wife, they do amazing things. If you guys aren't following Frameable Faces, they are a business that leverage Meerkat and Periscope to tell the story of the two people behind there. I would hire them. I would tell people to hire them because of the people that they are. And every brand should take that lesson on what those guys do.